if you're closing at less than 30%. In this video, I'm gonna share with you 17 simple tips you can implement immediately to close more deals faster. Tip number 1. Stop talking about your company. Now, you might believe you work for the best company in the world with the best solution, best offer, best service, best whatever. But the truth is, your prospects simply do not care about that. What they do care about is how can you help them? How can you solve the problem? And ultimately, every prospect, when you start talking with them, they are asking themselves with them, what's in it for me? So when you start talking about your company, how great it is, unless they ask you specifically about it, it brings them zero value to focus your energy, showing them a slide that can go over the history and the logos you closed and all the things you believe is most important for them. Tip number 2, stop pitching. This ties directly into what we just mentioned. When we focus on pitching, we're focused on trying to share all the great benefits that we believe that they'll receive by simply working with us, by buying our product, buying our service, and all the cool things that might happen for their business as a result. But the reality is, when someone is spending all their time pitching, you now are focused more on yourself, your company, your product, and you're now focusing on them. And when you want to influence and sell someone else, the energy and focus needs to be on them and their company, not you. That's how you actually start shifting behavior. So when you focus on pitching, oftentimes that other person may not feel heard, may not feel it's the best solution, and you're not gonna know that if you're spending all your energy trying to share how incredible your solution is. Number 3, follow the 90-10 rule. Now, this piggybacks right off those first 2 tips I just mentioned, but the 90-10 rule is very, very simple. When you look at the overall sales process, the sales call, you are running a 90%, 10% ratio, meaning 90% of the time, the prospect is talking, they're sharing, talking about themselves, what's going on in their situation, and 10% is you sharing and talking about your company. This means you'll pitch less. You'll focus more on asking more questions, better questions, deeper questions. And ultimately, you're just gonna get them talking. And they're ultimately going to share enough for you so you know what to actually present to actually sell them on your solution. And when you look at the top reps, they typically will spend more time understanding the prospect and asking more questions versus just actually pitching. And if you're using any type of call recording software like Gong, it'll actually break down the actual percentages for you so you can look and see exactly where you stand. And it's pretty common. The top reps typically are closer to the 90-10 ratio. They might be at 80-20, but regardless, they are shooting towards talking significantly less and asking more questions. And the data has shown the reps who struggle the most, who close the least amount of deals, are usually heavy on them talking and not enough on the prospect. So focus on 90-10. Number 4, stop talking through the sale. So as you can see here, each tip I've mentioned so far is really feeding off each other. When we talk through the sale, and this is not just a sale at the very end, this is a sale of maybe selling them on a specific pain point or issue that they're having. It's getting a little bit of data from them and then us suddenly getting excited and then trying to jam down extra bullet points or stories or what we believe is to be relevant to hopefully get them to actually take action. So for example, let's just say you sell a sales CRM. And you uncover they're currently using Google Sheets to manage their whole flow of prospects from outbound all the way through close. And you know it's a pain for them. And once they mention it's a pain for them, if you get overly excited, start talking through the sale, you might start focusing on, hey, wow, that's incredible. You know it's you're already using Google Sheets. It's not a good solution. Honestly, if you keep using it, you're going to lose deals. And I had prospect 1, prospect 2, prospect 3 who was also using this Google Sheets as well. They're losing all types of deals. So it's really cool that you're going to do this because ultimately, once you have a CRM, you can manage your deal flow better, et cetera, blah, 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 blah. And ultimately, you are talking through the sale because they already know that they need to make a change. So when you are overdoing that and you are stating those words and you're stating those stories and you're overdoing those points and they're already sold on it, you actually are creating more sales resistance and you're talking through the sale of that point. So this is why it goes back again to the 90-10 rule. If you can focus on driving towards that world class of 90-10, by default, you'll talk less and you'll pitch less and you're less likely to actually talk through the sale. You're actually allowing them to talk themselves and to verbalize what's on their mind so they can soak in the pain and soak in why they need to take action now. Tip number 5, dive deep into their pains and challenges. If there is no pain, there is no gain. The truth is, you want to cover not just what they desire and what they want, but you got to cover what are their pains, what are their challenges, and what's that really mean for them. And the truth is, people will take more action based off pain versus just gain. And you want to be able to dive in deep and understand the true impact at multiple levels. So not just at the level you're called into, but at every single level, whether it's below them or above them, or even lateral to them. And we can cover the true pain, the true impact. You'll be more likely to be able to actually move the deal forward as part of that process. Tip number 6, dive into their COI, cost of inaction, and the ROI, return on investment, and have them quantify it for you. And ultimately, when you think about COI, that's the pain or cost of not taking any action. And then the ROI is the future gains you might receive because of their investment. You really need to have both. But here's the truth. When you break it down to most simple terms, ROI is gain and COI is pain. So if you have both in place, you have pain and you have gain, the truth is people are more likely to take action because of pain versus gain. Here's a really simple example. If it was a gain desire, an ROI desire, if you will, let's just say you could eat healthier, you could work out consistently, and you'll look better, you'll feel better, it'll be awesome, you'll be able to attract a better spouse, etc. That might be a potential ROI if you're looking to make a change in the health department. And are you likely to do those things, eat healthy, be consistent, work out, and do all those things that it requires to be in great, excellent shape? Yeah, maybe. Possibly, but on the flip side, if you just went to the doctor and they just discovered, hey, you are significantly overweight, you are considered obese, you have high blood pressure, you have heart palpitations, you have terrible sleep, your brain's not getting enough oxygen, your health is deteriorating, and if you keep it up, you're gonna die at a young age. Well, between those two, which one are you most likely to take action based off of? Is it going to be the major pain or the major gain? And the truth is, most people are going to take action because of the pain versus the gain. And it's no different actually in business, where oftentimes the cost of inaction is going to be a bigger driver of behaviors versus just a return on investment. And when you really think about it at the very base level, this makes sense. Because at the very heart of everyone's decision is level of status. Meaning, if the company is currently doing, let's just say, $10 million a year, they know if they invest in XYZ software, maybe it'll help them grow to $12 million. And that can be very enticing, right? As extra $2 million growth, that's great. And that is an ROI, a return on investment of gaining $2 million. But on the flip side, let's just say if they don't take action, it will actually cost them customers. And instead of being at $10 million, it may drop them down to $8 million. So you have an $8 million, it's a $2 million cost of inaction, and also suddenly you also have the ROI of $2 million to $12 million. Which one are they most likely to take action? To protect the loss of $2 million or gain of $2 million? And the truth is, most people are going to take action because of the cost versus the gain. But the cool part is, as a sales professional, if you can uncover what that potential loss is, also the potential gain, now suddenly that opportunity cost is also built into that cost of inaction. So now instead of just being a potential $2 million loss or a $2 million gain, it's really a $4 million potential opportunity cost and loss if they don't take action. So now what you have is you have emotional elements tied in along with logical elements as well. But more importantly, you're focused heavily on the cost of inaction, but you also ask the right questions up front, so you also uncover the potential ROI as well. So when you have both the COI and the ROI, you're actually in multiple parts of the brain, which will drive faster action and lead to faster closes. Tip number 7, only demo and present what's important and relevant for them. Now, depending on what you sell, you might have potentially hundreds of really cool things to share with your prospect. But the truth is, not all 100 are equal. In fact, they probably won't care about most of them. So if you start to overly pitch and get too excited, start to share all 100 plus things, they are less likely to actually process and digest all of it, to see the actual benefit and in how it will actually help them remove the COI and help them achieve their ROI. What you want to do is just identify what is most relevant and most impactful based on what you uncovered in the discovery process. Because based on what you uncovered in that process, now when you show them how it will actually help them achieve, specific ROI and give it a certain COI elements, this actually drives faster behavior. It becomes crystal clear to them on their current state and where they actually want to go as a desired state. Tip number 8, understand their buying process. The mistake many sales professionals make is they have a basic idea that they ask early on in the process about what it looks like to maybe make a buying decision, but they do not get granular to really uncover who is all involved, what that process actually looks like internally, how do they actually get approvals, and who's all ultimately going to impact it, whether it's directly or indirectly. And when you uncover actually how they make a buying decision, this allows you now to take different steps because of that conversation. So for example, if in the initial discovery phase, you uncover that they mentioned they love to get the insight of specific user buyers, people who are actually currently using the current products, if you understand that to be true and you know that's going to impact how they make decisions, wouldn't that simply make sense to uncover how they actually do that internally? Like, do they have people try stuff out? Do they have an internal crew that wants to trial things out? Do they want to get feedback? Is it a democratic process where they vote? Is there someone who's got potentially more influence within the group that makes decisions? We don't know. So ultimately, you want to be able to uncover what that looks like up front, because now that may shift how you run the rest of the process. And the truth is, a sales process is very rarely a linear process. Oftentimes, what you uncover in the discovery phase will help guide and direct where you want to go. If you did a good job up front and you are starting at the very top exec, you might go up and down the process within their org structure to actually get the information you need to help them make a buying decision. But ultimately, you have to understand what that process looks like. And a very simple way to think about it is this. If you were to sit down with a decision maker and you had them write out a step-by-step manual, steps 1, 2, 3, 4, on exactly what needs to be done in excruciating detail on their side and working with you to come to a buying decision, what would that look like? So that may mean in your discovery phase, you may spend 15, 20 minutes working that out, mapping it out visually with them, so this way you're both on the same page. Because the mistake many people make is they don't do that and they wait till the very end, and because it's unclear the actual buying process, there are many more obstacles that are now involved, and perhaps those obstacles that pop up may impact you right then, but also on top of that, what if it impacts how your company will offer a deal up later down the road from your deal desk? So when you know that to be true, you want to make sure you do the work up front to ask those questions to uncover how you can navigate the rest of the process based on how they personally buy. Tip number 9, help them build a business case. In times of a recession, a lot of times, if they might personally just like you, like your solution, might be really sold emotionally, but have you also sold them logically? Have you helped them build a business case to sell to themselves or anybody else in the organization? And the truth is, most decisions require many buying influences. So if they need to justify to anybody else, are you helping them build that business case? And this ties into some of the past stuff we already uncovered already, because ultimately when you ask the right questions up front, you are helping them build a business case to be able to justify how your solution will help get rid of the COI and how it will help drive towards the ROI. But what you don't want to do is wait till the very end where you're going over the pricing, you're right at the negotiating point, and at that point you're trying to build a business case. You don't want that to happen. You want the business case to be built early on, up front, so as you progress through, you're adding more bullets to that business case, so it's highly effective when they need to pull it out to be able to influence anybody else to bring them on board. Tip number 10, help make them a hero. This is a big deal, especially if you're working with a champion, and if you know that they need to sell it internally, you want to make them look good, because ultimately when they look good, it's going to help their career as well. So that means you can't just logically sell them. This is why if you try to logically sell someone and say, here are all the facts, here's our track record, here's all these things, most of them are going to resist. Most of them will need both emotion and logic. But ultimately, you want to make them the hero. How can you make them the hero in the situation? If you think of any great movie that has a great storyline, such as say Star Wars, there's going to be a hero like Luke Skywalker, and there's also going to be a guide like Yoda. The guide is a person that helps the hero win, have the epiphany, and ultimately achieve their dream outcome. In business, you are the guide. Your goal is to help the hero be successful in their mission, be successful in getting rid of that COI, helping them achieve that ROI as a result. So when you're able to do that, it's really, really powerful. But if you want to go even one step deeper, even if you are working with the executive, the economic buyer, the person that ultimately pulls the trigger, how can you make them a hero in the situation for their business in their own eyes? Ultimately, people want to be validated in the decision that they're making, so how can you help them be the hero in the decision-making process? And you do it by all the things I've already mentioned so far, and a few more we're going to cover in a little bit. Tip number 11, gain micro commitments along the way. And micro commitments are small micro decisions you're having them make to move the deal forward. And a really simple example is, if you are wrapping the call up, are you setting a clear next step with them on the call? When they are committing to that and you have it on the calendar, that's a micro commitment. And when you think about it in the sales process, it's full of these micro commitments of you're asking to do certain things, answer certain questions, or fill out certain things, or to engage with parts of their team. Those are all micro commitments. So you want to gain micro commitments along the way, which actually will move the deal forward. And if they are not agreeing to these micro commitments, those are pink flags in which you then want to dive in deeper to uncover what's really going on and how can you eliminate those pink flags to actually move forward. Tip number 12, eliminate uncertainty proactively. Uncertainty is one of the biggest reasons why people get stuck in either status quo or simply do not buy and go with somebody else. When you think about it, in life, you as a human being, we as human beings, your decision makers, they all want certainty. Certainty is one of the most powerful things in the world. So for example, if your prospect knew if they could eat the single pill that would get rid of all their biggest issues and would also help them achieve the biggest goals, if they were 100% certain in it, they would take that pill. That's no different than anybody else. And people could charge an astronomical amount for certainty. So how can you add more certainty in your process to remove their uncertainty? So what you want to think about is, what are parts of your solution, your offer, your company that people are uncertain about, and how can you eliminate that? Let me give you a really simple example. I run a high-performance sales coaching business. Some salespeople are uncertain if they're going to get results from my programs. So I help remove and reduce uncertainty through a few different ways. For example, if you check out my website, I have an insane amount of testimonials, case studies, screenshots, and simply proof more than anybody else in the industry to help increase certainty in the solution. I also make sure I put together videos like this and literally hundreds of other videos online and tons of content out there so people know and they can just test out the free stuff first to ensure they like it before they go into the paid stuff. And ultimately, all I'm doing is helping remove the uncertainty someone may have in choosing me as their sales coach. So what you want to ask yourself is, in your process, in your solution, in your company, what are some common objections? What are some reasons companies are uncertain with your solution? And what could you do up front that can help reduce or eliminate that uncertainty? And the more proactive you are, the more likely you are to be able to close virtually objectionless. Which ties into tip number 13, eliminate objections and roadblocks proactively. Similar to before, if you uncover common objections or common concerns or common roadblocks in the process, you know it just takes a lot longer to actually move your sales process forward. What can you do up front to minimize or eliminate those objections or those roadblocks? So for example, if you are commonly getting the objection that certain prospects are unsure if it will fit their use case, what are those common use cases? How can you put together some case studies to help eliminate that objection? And how can you bring it up front? So let's just say, for example, if we go back to the sales CRM example, let's just say you sell a sales CRM and you're calling on the SMB market, and specifically you're calling on industrial manufacturers, which generally speaking, they're not as tech savvy, maybe even potentially behind the times in technology, and it's pretty common they might not even have a CRM depending on the size of the organization. And since they've been around for a while, they might be used to just doing what they normally do, which might be an Excel document, a Google Sheet, whatever, Post-it notes, who knows, whatever they are doing. And they might be concerned that will a CRM even be necessary for what they do, their industry, etc. And the truth is if you're in sales watching this, you know a sales CRM helps anyone who's got a sales process. But for them, they don't necessarily see it that way. So if you uncover it to be a really common objection for the ICP, ideal customer profile you go after, well, perhaps you can go and get some case studies or get some examples of happy customers who are specific in the industrial space who have the same use case as well. So now you're able to illustrate that up front as part of your example. So for example, let's say you go into the demo now and you're showing specific features based off what you uncovered up front that's really relevant for this prospect, and you can now incorporate a story of Chan's Manufacturing, who is also doing Google Sheets as well, and how they utilize a certain feature to help gain more business. So you can see how powerful that can be when you are actually proactive in your process. And you can apply the same concept with everything, such as any roadblocks that you may run into. So for example, if you uncover, because you did a good job earlier on, that is part of the buying process, the agreement must go through legal, and they told you it typically takes 4 weeks to go through legal. Well, instead of waiting until the very, very end, where they get on pricing, you're waiting trying to finalize the agreement, and now you're waiting another 4 weeks on top of that for the agreement to go through legal, go through the red lines, back and forth, etc. Why not introduce the agreement earlier on to the legal team as you get a little further deeper in this opportunity? So now they have a chance to actually start going through it simultaneously while you might be going through, say, a proof of concept or other parts of the sales process. So this way, they have at least 90% dialed. So when you get to the right end when you're closing, you're not adding an extra 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks on top of that to actually close. So we start thinking this way, you are playing like a grandmaster in chess. You are playing 3 to 5 moves ahead because you know what's going to be an objection anyways, or you know it's going to be a roadblock. So all you got to do is take action up front to ensure it doesn't happen on the back end. Closing tip number 14, adjust your style to fit their personality type. The truth is, everyone is different. And there's really 4 core personality types, and most people are a blend of a couple different ones. So for example, there's the analytical type, which that person's very analytical, likes detailed features, facts, numbers, etc. There's the drivers, in which they're action takers, they're go-getters, they're very direct, they want to get things done. There's 3 amiable, right? People that are kind of a little softer, a little bit easier to talk to, very emotionally based. And there's 4 expressive, in which they have good energy, good vibes. You can tell they're charismatic in their personality, etc. And each of these need to be sold a different way. And like I mentioned earlier, most people are a blend of a couple different ones. So if you know that to be true, you have to adjust your style. And let me give you a really simple example. My primary personality type is I'm a driver. I'm a go-getter. I like to get things done. I don't like a lot of bullshit. I like people to be very direct with me. I like to remove all fluff and just get it done. So if I'm talking to a decision maker who is very amiable and soft, much more emotions based, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. If I come in super high, like super direct, I'll completely turn them away. That'll scare them off. So with that being said, that means when I'm talking with them, I need to adjust everything from how I ask questions, how I run the process, how I dive in deeper, because ultimately I might run them the wrong way by not adjusting my style. And the mistake many people make is they have their natural instinctual style with the way they do things, and they hope process will adjust to them, or they don't even realize it, and ultimately that may cause deals to get lost because of that. But if you can increase that self-awareness and cover what is your core strength, who are you specifically, and what are they most likely to be like, and then you can actually adjust how you actually interact with them to get to highest possible throughput, to actually get them to do what you want to do as part of your sales process. Closing tip number 15, disqualify immediately if it's not a good fit. One of the worst things you can do as a sales professional is spend a lot of time with people who are just not qualified. This ultimately will frustrate you, make you upset, and give you just a bad taste in your mouth, even about sales. But when you realize When you focus on working with highly qualified prospects, suddenly sales is actually really, really fun and your deal cycles close much faster. The key is qualifying or disqualifying them early on in your process so you ensure it's actually worth your time. And the mistake I find a lot of people make is they spend a lot of time with tire kickers early on. And there are people that I call Seymours, in which you do a demo, they want to see another example. They want to see an example of this, example of that. They want to see more of this, see more of that. And ultimately they're Seymours. They'd love to see a lot of things, but they can't pull the trigger. And you want to eliminate time with those type of Seymours. And the way you do it is you qualify or disqualifying up front. So let me give you a really, really simple example. So if you're meeting with a prospect and you have a great discovery, but you uncover they're what I call a technical buyer, meaning they can't say yes to you, but they can say no. They may evaluate the product, but they ultimately are not the final decision maker. They got to run it by somebody else, probably the economic buyer, which is the only person that can say yes, even everyone else says no, but they also say no when everyone else says yes. So if you meet this technical buyer and you uncover this early on, and let's just say, for example, this technical buyer is like, oh, I want to see a demo, I want to see all the features and benefits, and I want to see all these things. That sounds great. And then you start diving a little bit deeper, and you do the demo with them, and now they want to do a proof of concept. They want to do like a 2 or 4 week trial of your service, of your solution, and like, I really want to see this. And you're like, okay. The average rep says, sure, let's do that. But the elite rep, if they've done a really good job in the discovery phase, they've uncovered the whole buying process, who's all involved, before they invest more time with this process into something time intensive, like a proof of concept for several weeks or a trial, whatever we want to call it, for several weeks or even potentially even a month, they're going to make sure it's actually still qualified. They're going to disqualify as soon as possible if they don't believe to be qualified. So for example, let's just say, for example, in the same situation, this technical buyer has been keeping you from meeting anyone else in the buying process, and they had already told you that there's 4 other people, but they're resistant to introduce you to them as well. This is a time you want to pause and see what's really going on. This may be a point where you have to pause the conversation and use an if-then statement, meaning if I do this, then you'll do this. Is that right? Or if I do this, then we can do this. And ultimately, when you start doing that, instead, you are forcing them to also pause and take you seriously as well, because what you don't want to do is go down that path of go through the proof of concept and still not have a clear outline of exactly what's going to happen between all the buying influences. And when you look at a selling situation, it's not a one-way relationship where it's all you or all the prospect. It is a partnership where you're working together to collaborate to solve a problem. And sometimes if the prospect is not willing to work together, and you obviously have tried to ask in many different ways to work with them, it may be time to disqualify them and simply move on until they're actually more serious to get more people involved. Closing tip number 16. Set clear, scheduled next steps that progress the deal forward with clear outcomes and expectations for all parties. Too often do I hear of sales professionals who have a great discovery call or a great demo, a great step in the process, and the next step is, I'll call you later, some next step. I'll email you later a few different times. That is one of the fastest ways to actually get ghosted. The truth is, when you're talking with them on that Zoom call, on the Microsoft Teams call, when you're live with them on that call, that is when they are hottest. That is when the pain is most present. That is when you have the undivided attention for the most part. So at that point, you always want to make sure you are setting very clear next steps and a clear desired outcome of those steps. And what you don't want to do is have to do the follow-up. But also on top of that, what you don't want to do is just meet to meet. It should be very clear exactly what's going to happen between now and then to ensure it's going to be a really fruitful call that's actually going to move it forward. This is one of the things where it's easy to do, but it's just as easy to not do. So before you wrap that call up, you definitely want to plan at least 5 to 10 minutes to ensure you go through clear expectations from both parties and set a clear next step. And let me give you a really simple example. Hey Bob, so let's talk in more detail next week on exactly how we can help you achieve big desirable objective X, Y, and Z. So let's do this. Let's have another call for next week. How'd your calendar look for, say, Tuesday at 9 o'clock? That sounds good. Cool, I'm gonna send you an invite right now. Boom, on the spot, send them an invite. Between now and also Tuesday at 9 o'clock, let's also do this as well. If you can do me a favor, can you get with your team Y, gather data points 1, 2, and 3, And then on Tuesday, I'm also going to bring my solutions engineer as well, so we can make sure together we can collaborate, so we can show you specific use cases and examples on how we can help you achieve desirable objective X, Y, and Z. Does that sound good? Okay, cool. Boom. Think about how powerful that is right there. You're saying clear next steps. It's clear what's going to happen on that call. It's really clear what they need to do. It's really clear what you got to do. So now everyone walks away feeling really, really good. This is simple and easy to do. You simply have to commit to actually doing it and making it an actual habit. Now imagine on top of this as well, after you wrap the meeting up, you fire off a quick email to them, recapping those specific things going to happen next in a very short, simple email. Now you are a pro level. You're standing up, you are showing up far beyond what most people will even do on a call, even after a call, which ultimately will increase your closing ratio. Closing tip number 17, stop trying to close. Here's the reality. Closing techniques don't matter really that much anymore. And the people that are only really using these days are in highly transactional roles. And if you're using weird, goofy tricks from like 1972, it feels gross for your soul and that prospect as well. So you want to avoid doing any weird, crazy closing tactics and techniques. If you haven't caught on by now through this whole video, what really matters the most is being super strong in a really powerful discovery process and framework. Because when you do an incredible job asking questions, not just upfront, but throughout the whole process, really as a phase, if you will, the close just naturally happens as a byproduct of it. That's why these closing tips I've shared so far are so heavily focused on the customers, focused on the prospect, because when you do the right things up front, the close happens simply because it makes sense emotionally and logically. Now, if you want to learn how to run a really powerful discovery framework in exact detail so you can close more, I'll see you in this next video right here.